The Justice Department releases those long-awaited Carter Page FISA documents.
The documents include an October 2016 application to wiretap Page.
Many people in the so-called Department of Justice are continuing to do exactly what they shouldn't do.
The great mystery is why the president has not spoken up for our country. The best way to deal with that is to vote in November.
A hostage situation in Los Angeles at a Trader Joe's grocery store. Police saying the suspect has surrendered.
We'll get, yet again, a lot of news.
I do have a big question
Washington
for you, though, before we start.
Yes.
How do you keep your big New York hair when we've got so much rain?
Listen.
It's got to be a problem.
I went for a run yesterday in Central Park, and my New York hair didn't even wilt to 6 miles of looping Central Park.
You ran 6 miles?
This is why I come.
16 years since I ran 6 miles.
He runs for all of us.
Holy cow.
And you've done a lot of reading over the last 24 hours.
Mm-hmm. I have. Well, you know, we have a
hold it up for us,
412-page top secret FISA document released.
You know, I'm giving a lot of credit to FedEx this morning because they FedExed it on Friday and it came in on Saturday instead of on Monday.
I'm also seeing
Good job, FedEx.
I'm seeing a lot of lines.
Yeah.
A lot of black lines.
Ooh, interesting.
It was a light read.
There's
a lot of redaction.
He read it because it's short.
And that is where we start this morning.
We are going to begin with a Fox News alert. The Department of Justice releasing hundreds of heavily redacted FISA documents.
The 400-plus redacted pages, as Pete said, revealing that the infamous Steele dossier led to the warrant that allowed surveillance leading up to the 2016 election.
Garrett Tinney is in Washington, live with the details. Garrett, good morning.
Hey, good morning, y'all. These documents also show that the Democrat-funded Steele dossier played a significant role in the FBI's justifications and the request to wiretap former Trump campaign advisor Carter Page. In the initial foreign intelligence surveillance application submitted in October of 2016, the FBI stated it believes Page has been the subject of targeted recruitment by the Russian government to undermine and influence the outcome of the 2016 U.S. presidential election in violation of U.S. criminal law. The documents also include several renewal applications to extend surveillance of Page. And the last renewal in late spring 2017 is significant because at that point, the FBI had dumped Christopher Steele as a source after he misled them over his media contacts. As the documents state, subsequently, the FBI closed source number 1 is an FBI source. And while the visible sections of the renewal application don't indicate the dossier was verified, the FBI said that Steele was reliable based on his previous work. Now, Carter Page maintains he did nothing wrong, and with this latest release of documents, he tells Fox News in a statement, "I'm having trouble finding any small bit of this document that rises above complete ignorance and or insanity." Now, House Democrats, though, have been quick to say these documents bolster their arguments that the FBI had legitimate concerns about Carter Page. Back to y'all.
Thank you very much, Garrett. Appreciate it. I rarely have very few things to say. This morning, I have one thing to say. I don't know if you can zoom in on camera 1. Source number 1. That is what the Steele dossier, Christopher Steele and the dossier were source number 1 for the FISA application. And the FBI admits that they were likely looking for information that could discredit. In the document, it says candidate number 1. Of course, they got that right because Trump was candidate number 1 and Hillary Clinton was candidate number 2 on election night. So they were trying to find bad info on candidate number 1. They acknowledged that. Source number 1. I mean, you don't start with source number 1 unless that was the primary reason by which you sought this FISA application. It's almost like, what else do you need to know? I read the first 40 pages. Griff, you read all 400.
Well, half of it's redacted.
That's true.
So he's kind of cheating.
It was a quick read.
Listen. This is an interesting part. So Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch, Griff, he had this tweet. He said, Judicial Watch now has Carter Page FISA docs. They are heavily redacted, but seem to confirm that the FBI and DOJ misled the courts in withholding info about Clinton DNC being behind the info used to get the FISA warrant. We were talking before the show started, Griff, and you were saying both sides are trying to use this to their advantage. What is the argument from the Republican side, and what are Democrats saying?
So Republicans, like the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, Mark Meadows, right? He's out there already. Here's a tweet he's put out there. He's saying about this potentially groundbreaking development here. The Carter Page FISA docs should be declassified and further unredacted, protecting only sources and methods so Americans can know the truth if the previous administration was funneling campaign research towards surveillance we need to know. And that's a valid argument because, as you've seen, so much of it is redacted. Now, whether we should be privy to it or not, I don't know. But you've also got Nancy Pelosi, right, House Minority Leader. She's putting out a statement on the FISA application, and she's saying, despite President Trump's repeated claims, these documents provide clear evidence of Russia's coordination with Carter Page. So there is something in there. Let me tell you one development that Garrettini was mentioning, though, and Pete, a little bit to your point, and that is source number one is the author of the dossier, Christopher Steele. And on page 318, it says that the FBI had determined Steele was no longer a reliable source, but yet you still had the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, who moved forward with making the argument that it should be renewed, that the FISA
You're saying page 318. I want to look at page 318. I haven't yet. You're saying it says Steele was no longer a reliable source.
So while there's a takeaway for Republicans to make the case and Democrats to point to Carter Page, this has new questions for Rod Rosenstein. This is going to, in layman's terms, become a little bit of a problem for him to answer to perhaps on Monday.
Yeah, another hearing. Get excited, right?
That's
how many
true.
of these we've had and how many questions people still have about where we are today and how it got to this point. Because this is all about the Mueller investigation, right? These were the early stages of what led to ultimately this investigation.
Exactly. You know who signed this document? The only signature on this entire document is James Comey. Of course, it's the deep state signature page. You've got Comey, Kerry, McCabe, Brennan, Clapper, Susan Rice, Sally Yates. But Comey's the only actual signature that we see in the document. One other thing I'll point, I call it the deep state signature page. There's James Comey, but you got Kerry, and as I said, McCabe, Brennan, Clapper, Susan Rice, Sally Yates, all big fans of then candidate Trump. One other line I found in this document, which is probably very standard in FISA applications, but meaningful in this context, these same authorities, meaning the authorities that come from a FISA warrant, may also incidentally acquire other foreign intelligence info. So maybe Carter Page was the nose under the tent to incidentally surveil other people or find other info about the Trump campaign. That's what's been alleged. That's what's in black and white. They didn't redact that one, shockingly, Griff. But
no, they didn't.
Let's know that this application wasn't just about Carter Page. It was about a lot more than Carter Page.
What is the big picture on this, Griff? Because I, like many folks, and I know a number of our viewers, are like, does this have an impact on where we are? Is this going to lead to anything big? Is this going to impact the Mueller investigation? What's the takeaway
Absolutely.
from this?
Good point, Abby. Listen, pull not the sheets back over your head. Tune in, wake up. You don't have to get out of bed, but listen, because it matters, because it is at the basis, fundamental level, the methods through which we surveil people like Carter Page, and the basis that has led to the Mueller investigation. And that is why Pete's talking about source number one. And we're learning today a little bit more information, and transparency is what this should be about. I think you'll see a harder push for revealing some of these redactions because, as you've seen, so much of it is redacted. And we're talking about an entire investigation now that's gone on for 18 months that was based solely on the information contained within these documents. And, you know, Tom Fitton really does get quite a bit of kudos because it was through his FOIA request for the American people to see this. And so the takeaway is this does matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said I read 40 pages. I actually read like 8.
Yeah, I know.
It was redacted.
I knew that.
You know.
I knew that. You don't have to explain yourself. Send us your thoughts on all this, friends at foxnews.com. But there's a lot of other news going on as well. Right. And sometimes we don't focus on the local races going on in this country. We talked yesterday about the Democratic Party and bigger picture. How extreme it has moved. They talk about ICE, abolishing ICE, talking about open borders, and the struggle, if you are a Democrat and maybe you don't agree with the extreme of those policies, where you fit in the party today. So in Arizona's 2nd Congressional District, there was a debate, and one of the candidates, she got booed a number of times for basically defending ICE and saying some things that you might find pretty rational. Listen to this.
I just want to be really clear. If you would have declared your support for ICE agents without any increased oversight, would you have supported Democratic leadership in condemning Ms. Waters' comments?
So that's Ann Kirkpatrick, who is, no, I don't know if you would frame it as moderate, but a reasonable member of the Democratic Party. She's in a debate, and she's asked, would you support ICE, and should we condemn Maxine Waters saying you should harass people that support Trump. Courageously, she raised her hand. Remember when President Trump raised his hand saying, will you abide by? It takes courage to be the only one to raise your hand. Sometimes it cuts for you in Trump's case. I wonder whether in this case it will hurt her with the grassroots who have clearly moved further left.
It probably will, but you know what? She doesn't lose her soul in all of this. And clearly she knows the woman that she is, and she's probably telling herself it's not worth winning an election to give into this, and that's not what I want to stand
I think
by.
it buries the lead a little bit, though, because it's shocking that only one person on that panel thought that Maxine Waters' call to harass members of this administration or any administration shouldn't be condemned. I mean, clearly that's just not the politics, the partisan politics that people want to continue in Washington.
By the way, we had so much to talk about this morning. We didn't even get to Hillary Clinton in Central Park yesterday. She said some stuff.
At the Aussie Fest, whatever that is.
We'll bring to you later on. Yes.
A lot more coming up in the show, but we do have some other headlines I do want to bring you. We start with a Fox News alert. A woman is killed during a supermarket standoff. Up to 50 people were inside a Los Angeles Trader Joe's when the terrifying siege began.
I hear about 6 more shots, so I'm pretty sure they were returning fire at him. Just a scary moment.
Then I saw people just running towards the back of the store, so I knew that, something was wrong.
People were running for their lives as others escaped through windows at Trader Joe's. An employee was shot dead inside. The 3-hour standoff ended when the suspect walked out in handcuffs. Earlier in the day, the suspect shot his girlfriend and his grandmother, who is now in critical condition. And now to another Fox News alert. The war on cops striking overnight. A Florida officer shot during a gunfight. The Fort Myers cop now in stable condition after emergency surgery. The suspect is in custody. In Texas, a 32-year veteran of the Dallas Police Department is killed while blocking traffic during a funeral escort for a fellow officer. A suspected drunk driver is now facing charges for hitting Senior Corporal Earl Jamie Givens. Horrible. Also, this Vice President Mike Pence giving a boost of support to Georgia gubernatorial candidate Brian Kemp.
Brian Kemp is the real deal. He puts his family first. And when Brian Kemp becomes governor, he'll always put Georgia families first.
The support coming ahead of Tuesday's election against Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle. The president also endorsing Kemp on Twitter, writing, quote, Brian is very strong on crime and borders, loves our military vets and the Second Amendment. He will be a great governor. Those are your headlines. Boy, these midterms are really heating up.
And that endorsement is significant. Watch that on Tuesday because Cagle was the front runner and the president, just taking a little bit different tact. We'll see how much his endorsement matters. It certainly mattered in the last race.
We shall see. Well, moving on, the left ramping up their attacks on President Trump's pick for the Supreme Court. Our next guest worked as a clerk for Judge Kavanaugh and has a message for the critics.
And a police officer goes to the extra mile for a woman in his community. That's coming up.
Ruby Tuesday, 3-course meal, just $12.90.
I used to worry that they wanted to turn the clock back to the 1950s. Now I worry they want to turn it back to the 1850s.
Judge Kavanaugh poses a grave threat to women's health care.
Judge Kavanaugh was handpicked from a list of radical nominees.
His views are outside the mainstream.
There's another troubling aspect of Judge Kavanaugh's nomination: his views on presidential power.
Well, Democrats ramping up the fight against President Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, now demanding access to as many as 1 million pages of documents from his time working with the Bush administration.
But Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell calling their bluff, saying that he will schedule the confirmation vote right before the midterm elections. Here to react is one of Judge Kavanaugh's former law clerks, attorney Zena Bash. Great to have you with us, Zena.
Hi, good morning.
All right, so you know this man personally. Talk to us about him, and you say specifically he's been a champion for women.
Oh, absolutely. I've heard the talking points that we were just hearing, and there's absolutely no truth to them. As we all heard in his opening remarks at the White House, his mother was a trailblazer in the law. She was a prosecutor and a judge back when it was really tough, particularly tough for women to be in this profession. And her struggles really shaped him, and we see that in practice. So, for example, he has hired over the last 12 years more women than men. Over half of his clerks have been women. 1 year, he hired only women. And I can tell you from personal experience, as you said, I've known him for 12 years. He was my first boss out of law school 11 years ago, and since then has remained the strongest advocate for my career. And then if you want to look at his judicial opinions, you also see the same type of awareness of the challenges that women face. In one case, for example, there was a woman who had been badly beaten by her boyfriend and then went on to commit crimes with her boyfriend. And what the judge said was this woman could have felt compelled to commit those crimes because of this abuse that she had suffered. In other words, even though she wasn't under duress, there was no gun to her head, literally, she could have felt that way because of the battered woman syndrome. So he's really a pathbreaker in the law, and we see it. We see it across his.
Yeah,
his
some very important nuance and context there. Yet, as he faces his confirmation, not a single Democrat senator has yet to meet with Brett Kavanaugh. What are they missing when he sits there and lays out his judicial philosophy to them? What are they missing?
I think they're missing, 12 years, 300 opinions that have touched on really every single issue that is important to the American people. So when you have Democrats coming out from the get-go saying we are not going to vote for him when they haven't had a chance to read all of that, it's really striking. And then you couple that with what you said, some kind of request for an unprecedented number of documents. It's just a striking contrast there. And so what they're missing is a long history, a very long record of enforcing laws that protect the American people and the American economy. Just two quick examples. In one case where a large restaurant chain was trying to displace a bunch of American workers and bring in foreign, cheaper labor, he said that that was unlawful. Mere economic expediency for a company is not enough to fire a bunch of American workers. In a second quick example, when a foreign company tried to get rid of their Made in China labels, he again said that was unfair to American consumers. If they want to know what products are made in America versus made in China, they have a right to buy American if they want.
Zena, I love your perspective, knowing him so personally, but also bringing up his mom, because he spoke about her when he spoke to the country and what an example she's been to him all his life. It's an important perspective to have. Zena, thanks for being with us this morning. We will see how all of this plays out. Let's just hope that they give him the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah. Maybe one Democrat will meet with him. Maybe one. Just one. We'll see. Zena, thank you.
Not one?
Not one yet has met with him. Okay. Don't even meet with a guy. Okay. You know, then you can learn a lot. All right, well, he's a convicted terrorist and admitted to helping Al-Qaeda. So why is a judge allowing him to stay in America?
Plus, democratic socialism on the rise and capitalism under attack. Why don't the progressives get, what don't they get about our winning economy? That is coming up next.
Sunday morning, some quick headlines for you. A convicted terrorist will be able to keep his U.S. citizenship. Lawyers arguing that Ayman Ferris lied on immigration papers to obtain citizenship in 1999, but a federal judge ruled there's no evidence of that. Ferris admitted to scoping out the Brooklyn Bridge as part of an al-Qaeda plot to destroy it. He is set to be released from prison in 2020. In this, an American-born jihadist will go free just 14 years into his 65-year sentence. Saifullah Chapman, convicted in 2004 as part of the paintball jihad network, using U.S. parks to train for armed combat. The judge vacating the conviction because of a change in how violent crimes are defined. Pete, over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, democratic socialism, it's on the rise in the U.S. Case in point, New York congressional candidate Ocasio-Cortez, who claims the capitalism, it's on the way out. Listen.
Right now, when we have this no-holds-barred, Wild West hyper-capitalism, what that means is profit at any cost. Capitalism has not always existed in the world, and it will not always exist in the world.
The future of the Democratic Party right there, the Wild West of hyper-capitalism. But while the progressive left continues to attack our capitalist society and economy, our next guest has a dire warning about the perils of living in a socialist country. Let's bring in Republican strategist and attorney Peter Lamage, who fled communist Albania to America 30 years ago. Peter, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Look at these numbers right here to begin with. The Democratic Socialists of America, their membership, it was at 5,000 in 2016. It's at 45,000 in 2018. And the standard bearer of really the enthusiasm of the last election was Bernie Sanders, who labeled himself a Democratic Socialist. Let people know what is so dangerous about dabbling in this.
Look, when you talk about democratic socialism, it's a misnomer. It doesn't exist. You cannot establish socialism without force. You need force to do that. That is a transition between capitalism and complete communism. And without the force, you cannot establish some sort of democratic socialism that they are calling that. It is all about command and control. The government wants to have complete command and control over the population and the means of production, and that is what they are fighting for.
Absolutely. So another stat we've got here is political views amongst U.S. millennials. Nearly 6 in 10 affiliate with the Democratic Party or lean in that direction. We've always known young people tend to be left-leaning. The ideas sound great on paper or in concept, but ultimately America was founded on free people and free markets. You fled Albania, communism. What happens when command and control happens and the free market subsides?
Pretty much the government is controlling your life or my life. I think that people should be warned when Arnold Toynbee told us years ago that great civilizations are not murdered, they commit suicide. We are at the verge of committing suicide. What socialists want right here in the United States, the biggest fear that they have is the Constitution itself. Because the Constitution, when the Founding Fathers established it, they wanted you and I to be free, to have the liberty and prosperity and to pursue the dreams that God gave us, the rights that God gave us.
Not what government gave us.
Not the government. The government, if they grant us rights, they can remove those rights any time that they want. And that is the slippery slope that we're taking here in the United States. Right here in the state of Connecticut, for example, you have a socialist whose father was a member of the Communist Party running for governor. And the hypocrisy over here is that he used capitalism to make billions of dollars. He lives in Greenwich, Connecticut.
So
on the other hand, he wants your money and my money to forcefully be redistributed
because
to
he
other
thinks
people.
he knows better than you. You're dumb. He's smart. He's going to tell you what to do. Ultimately, where does this inevitably go? How do we do Democrats truly believe in socialism, or are they trying to win elections by saying we'll give you more free stuff?
No, they believe in socialism. They want
so
to
when they say
establish
they want to
socialism.
fundamentally transform, because Bernie Sanders said, I want to transform America. Is he rejecting the Constitution and capitalism and saying, I want a different country?
Absolutely, they are. That is the biggest fear that they have, because Constitution itself limits the government. These people want to have unlimited powers. They want to make sure that you and I have our rights limited, not the government powers.
So are they finally being honest? Are Democrats just sort of, now they're out and they're just like, well, we always kind of wanted collectivism. We always wanted government control. Now we're just going to say it.
These socialist candidates, they are being very honest. I mean, look what happened in the Bronx. You have a lady who attended Boston University, lived in Westchester County, completely hypocrite, moves to the Bronx, New York, takes advantage and manipulates the people of the Bronx over there to give her the nomination for Congress by promising them free stuff. The question is, where is the free stuff coming from?
And she doesn't even really know what she's talking about, as her interviews reveal. It seems that the dogma she learned in college lives loudly within her, and she's willing to continue
and
to
that's
push
where
it.
we're failing as a society. We're not educating our kids properly. We're not teaching them about the American exceptionalism, about constitutionalism, about the dangers of socialism, and we're failing our kids by not doing that.
That's the challenge. The hidden hand of the free market is more difficult to explain than free stuff from people that promise you things that have always ended in disaster. That's why you came here 30 years ago. Peter, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing and great perspective. Immigrants oftentimes give the best perspective on how special it is.
And there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them out there who would give you the same story.
Love it. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. All right. Well, remember when people burned the flag outside of Maxine Waters' office? Now, the Congresswoman says, well, she understands. That's next. Plus, forget he or she, and don't even call your kid a baby. How dare you? Now you should call them babies. Our parenting panel here to weigh in on this gender bender coming up.
Are all the circles the same color, or do you see different? This is a viral optical illusion. It was created by the University of Texas professor Dr. David Novak. And it's one of these things that has taken the internet by storm, and everyone has a different take on it. It reminds us of, remember the dress controversy, the black and the blue versus the white and gold, also the Yanny versus Laurel debate. So what's so interesting is all of those circles are actually beige.
Yeah.
They're the exact same color.
No, they're not.
They are.
No,
put it back up.
This is without a doubt, undeniably, the finest collection of pastel circles that you see there. There's yellow, there's a light orange, a green, there's this kind of a peach, a fuchsia in there.
Do you know why it was hard for you to say that, Griff? You hesitated for a second? Because if you actually concentrate on each, they turn beige.
No, they don't.
They do.
No,
I mean, this is...
So
I'm with you.
So it's the impact of the lines that you see there that are different colors.
Yes.
That impacts the way that you see the circle and the color that the circle is. But they're all the same. They're all the exact same beige color.
So we're told. And I believe that, I guess. Are there,
you see all beige if you look closely?
No,
if you focus on
kind
one?
of. If you just focus really tight. I don't know.
Do you get any points for getting the correct color of the lines? Because clearly the lines there are red and blue and yellow.
Well, isn't that, what are the primary colors? Or is it red, blue, and yellow?
Guys, we're really losing ourselves here. I feel like everyone's having the same conversation, though, looking at this together.
Send us your comments, friends@foxnews.com. What do you see? Do you see beige, or do you see what Griff sees?
Fascinating.
A cornucopia
What do you
of
see? Just a bunch of different colors?
It's a cornucopia of pastels. It's exactly what I see.
It's like Easter eggs.
Yes, it looks like Easter egg. It looks like an Easter egg basket.
It's really important
I see
morning
the same
television
thing, Griff.
right here.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, send us your thoughts. Yes, friends@foxnews.com. I do have some other headlines for you, though. We now know, and this is that horrible story we've been reporting on, we now know that the doomed duck boat killed 17 people on board. Faced near hurricane winds, the NTSB officials saying winds reached 73 miles per hour with waves at 4 feet high when the tourist boat capsized in Branson, Missouri. The state's attorney general now demanding answers as to why the vessel changed routes that day. The hospital released 2 survivors overnight. 17 people. And Conor McGregor is on the verge of signing a plea deal to keep him out of prison. TMZ reporting that UFC champ is in the final stages of negotiating a deal with New York prosecutors. They're apparently prepared to reduce the charge to a misdemeanor. He's facing up to 7 years behind bars and a permanent ban from the U.S. for attacking a rival fighter's bus back in April. You remember that story. And there's this. Maxine Waters is sticking up for the demonstrators who burned and stomped on the American flag outside of her L.A. office. Listen to this. This was supposed to be a counter-protest against a far-right group, but that group never ended up showing up. The California representative saying in part, while I do not agree with torching the flag as a form of protest, I understand the Constitution guarantees everyone the right to this form of free expression. Okay. And there's this. A police officer is becoming an internet sensation for going the extra mile. A New Hampshire woman was coming home from the grocery store when firefighters blocked off the road due to an emergency. The woman was concerned about getting her new purchases home. That is when Master Patrol Officer Tyler Cody jumped into action, helping her carry groceries half of a mile up the hill. The photos of his good deed are now going viral. What a good man. I love that.
Good.
Police
I'm glad it's getting attention.
Doing good things,
Yeah.
which they almost always do.
You know who I know would do that for me if I needed it?
Rick.
Is Rick Ragmuth. He would always step in to help.
Maybe.
No question. No question.
That's true.
Yeah.
You would.
Especially if I had a bag of potato chips.
Oh my
And
God.
especially if he had a scooter or a vehicle.
Like, that bag of potato chips set me on the worst trajectory all day long.
Me
yesterday.
too.
Yeah, if anybody watched the junk food yesterday, like it just was like the first thing in the morning.
Once you start.
Whatever you do in that
terrible.
morning for me is just the rest
I
of the
took
day.
the cookies home, Rick, and I finished them.
Exactly.
Bad.
Yeah, man. All right. It's hot down across parts of Texas. Take a look at this. Heat advisories here, heat warnings again today. However, it is going to get better, but we've got a couple more really hot days to get through. So take a look at this. Already a cool down up towards Oklahoma City. Today, again in Dallas, 102. But by Monday, you're down to, say, 96, 97 down across parts of Austin as well. So it does get better. As far as precipitation goes, take a look at this. We had big storms move across parts of the Mid-Atlantic yesterday. Lots of flooding around the Baltimore area. Same with D.C. And now all of that moisture is now moving in across parts of New England. Take a look at that. Get ready for Connecticut, Rhode Island. You're about to get hammered by some very heavy rain. And it's not done over the next few days. We have more rain moving in. This is additional rain rainfall that's going to happen over the next 7 days. So we're going to be talking about some pretty big flooding going on.
Hypothetically speaking, if you were a fine American passenger in New York headed to D.C. today, do you think you would have trouble getting home?
By a hypothetical train or plane?
By a plane.
You'll probably be fine, although there's going to be some residual delays from yesterday, and it's also still really windy out there, so we'll probably see.
And if you were to buy a hypothetical umbrella, would it be a weatherman umbrella?
Hopefully.
Probably.
That'll
I'm
get you
just saying.
A pink one or American flag one? That is the question.
Well,
they're both great.
Go on and take a look and see which
Thank
one
you,
you like
Rick.
better. You
Thanks,
bet.
Rick.
Well done.
Do you make less than $15 an hour? One political group claims if you do, you can call yourself a victim of violence. What happened to working your way up?
That's right. And a scary moment caught on camera. A circus performer blasts out of a cannon along tradition, but overshoots the net. Too much gunpowder.
Whoa!
What happened next? Whoa. Welcome back. Couple of quick headlines for you. SpaceX launching a powerful communication satellite overnight. The Telstar 19 Vantage rocketing into orbit from Cape Canaveral. It will provide internet to customers in the Americas and the Atlantic Ocean region. Wow. And a circus stunt goes horribly wrong after a performer shoots out of a cannon but misses the net. Take a look. Oh man, I don't want to watch that twice. The entertainer known as Bullet Man taking a hard landing in the stands in Chile, breaking his jaw and both legs. Thankfully, he didn't lose his life. The cannon operator taking the blame for not disconnecting a pressure hose before the launch. Just a minor oversight. Griff, down to you.
Thanks, Pete. Low wages are violence. That's according to the political group Move On, tweeting that if you make less than $15 an hour, you're a victim. So whatever happened to starting at the bottom and working your way up in the world? Well, Dr. Kevin McNamee, director of the California Health Institute and a businessman himself, joins us. Good morning, Kevin. What would be the impact on businesses if we actually had $15 minimum wage?
Great question. When you have $15 minimum wage being mandated by the state or federal government, that cuts into the profit margin of the small business owner, who is 65% of this economy. They are the largest employers in the nation. What results is that you're shifting the money from the business owner, who's barely scraping by, and giving it over to the employee. Result is that when the profits up so far, the employers will close up shop, lay off employees, or cut back hours. Result is that you have only the big giant companies surviving, like your Costco's, your Targets, your Walmarts, and puts the small business owners out of business.
And we're almost out of time.
To dictate.
Well, I just say correctly, Dr. McNamee, you actually closed a business because of this sort of problem.
I faced a number of challenges with people buying out of state, not paying sales tax. I saw a drop of 50% in my business. And my employees, I did profit sharing 3 years ago and had to stop because we were not getting above the line. Ultimately, as Los Angeles and California have raised minimum wage, it got to the point where it wasn't making sense. I was losing money each month and had to close the business. Result, we have people that are unemployed right now still searching for work.
Oh, my goodness. Well, Dr. Kevin McNamee, thank you very much for joining us this Sunday, and we'll see what happens. The chance is fight for 15. It's going to be one heck of a midterm election season. Thank you very much, Dr. McNamee.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Have you seen the video? Comedian Michelle Wolf comparing ICE to terrorists. Johnny Joey Jones lost both of his legs in a bomb blast while fighting terrorists in Afghanistan. He's here to react live in the next hour. Plus, forget he or she, and don't even call your kid a baby. Now you should call them babies. Our parenting panel here to weigh in on this gender bender. That coming up next.
We are back with this, a new trend among millennial parents raising their kids without a gender identity, calling them babies instead of babies. With no official research on how this impacts children as they get older, is this really a good idea? Well, we have got our parent panel here to weigh in. Joining me now is clinical psychologist Norman Freed, political scientist Jeannie Zaino, and Democratic strategist Jason Nichols. Great to have all of you here. My friends have been talking about this past year. This really seems to be a rising trend. Norman, you are a doctor. You know the biological issues that we're dealing with, how different females are from males. You say this is child abuse.
Well, I am a psychologist, and I will say that I wouldn't consider it child abuse, but I would suggest that aside from congenital abnormalities where genitalia might be ambiguous, not assigning a gender at birth is unfair to the child. It could create a tremendous amount of confusion. Children are born more from a Freudian perspective as an id, a massive undeveloped sense of biological needs and urges, and until the social and religious and cultural dynamics ultimately get involved, the child really needs somebody to teach them the way. Little people need big people to teach them and show them the way to be.
Yeah, Jeannie, I think parents, obviously their main job in life is to give their kids the tools to succeed in their own life when they become adults. And I'm sure in their own minds people are thinking, you know, this is giving them the freedom to decide what they want to be, but could it also have the opposite effect? Could this be harmful for babies and young kids growing up to not give them any identity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a noble goal for parents to want to or to consider doing this. My concern is that, number one, as you mentioned, there's not a lot of research on the impact, and I really think that's where the focus needs. The other thing is we live in a gendered society, and so when you choose this for your child, do they run the risk of entering a gendered society and having to face that sort of confusion? Are they going to be ostracized for this? These are all very real concerns that parents have to decide and make a choice for their own child.
Yeah, and Jason, doesn't that complicate things? I mean, I've got a 7-month-old. Do you not give them certain toys? Do you not give them a Barbie versus a Lego? I mean, doesn't this totally change the way you think about raising a child? Makes it really complicated.
Well, I think you're actually giving them more options. I think that's the important thing. You know, and I have to disagree with some of what's been said by the other panelists. I think what this could avoid is gender dysphoria. The idea that your gender and your sex have to match up. And one of the things that has happened in the past, particularly with people who are hermaphroditic, is that people have chosen their gender ahead of time. They've had their genitals removed, and later on they figure out that this isn't what they wanted. So I think that this is important. This is an important step. And the one argument that I've seen against it is bullying. And my thing is we need to teach our children not to be bullies, regardless of the gender identity of the person that they are encountering.
Yeah, Norman, I think it's one thing as kids grow up to figure out who and what they want to be and to accept that. But this trend with babies and really having no gender identity when they come out of the womb, is this going to be a trend that we see only increasing from here? I mean, where does this end?
It actually might be a trend that's increasing, and it's hard to tell exactly where it's going to end. I would, however, suggest that parenting needs to involve appreciation of social learning theory, children's developmental needs, as well as cultural and religious norms and values. And so, therefore, these decisions cannot be made by a baby or by even a child. When they get to a certain age where they are perhaps latency aged, they can make a decision that they say, I don't feel comfortable in my own body, at which point endocrinologists, psychiatrists, psychologists, clergy can all be involved with a decision of perhaps a gender reassignment.
All right, it's an important conversation to have. Norman, Jeannie, Jason, thank you all for being with us this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let us know what you think about that. Friends at foxnews.com. Next, declassified and unredacted. The DOJ releasing hundreds of FISA documents. More on that coming up.